It is so good to be back at Netroots Nation. In 2019, I sat on this stage with my sisters, Deb Holland, Ayanna Presley, and Rashida Tlaib. And interestingly, we were introduced by then State Rep Summer Lee. Together, we represented the first African-born women elected to Congress, the first Palestinian women elected to Congress, the first 2 Muslim women elected to Congress, and one of the first 2 indigenous women elected to Congress, and the first Black woman to ever represent the state of Massachusetts. At the time, we had just been sworn into Congress as part of the most diverse class in history. Today, I am proud to return to Netroots as part of even more diverse Congress. Over 50% of the freshman lawmakers this Congress are non-white, and our record high of 13 members of Congress are LGBTQ plus representatives. And we are expanding the communities we represent. We have the first Black woman to represent Pennsylvania, the first Latina representative in Illinois, and my little one was very excited about this one, the first Gen Z member of Congress ever. But it is not just about diversity on paper that matters. It is diversity of perspective that we bring. So when the Supreme Court says we are going to make it harder for Black and Indigenous kids to get into college, but do nothing about legacy admissions that favor the privileged, understand exactly what they are doing. They are trying to dismiss our experiences. They are trying to dismiss our perspective. They are trying to dismiss our pain. As my sister in service, Ayanna Presley, likes to say, those closest to the pain need to be closest to power. We need people in the halls of power who know what it's like to struggle with the burden of student debt. We need people in the halls of power who know what it's like to face discrimination based on their sexual orientation. We need people in the halls of power who know what it's like to live in the fear of deportation from the land they called home for their entire life. And we need people who are going to live with life-altering consequences of climate change for decades and decades to come. And we definitely need people who know what it's like to experience occupation, whether it is in Ukraine or Palestinian people who have now experienced occupation and displacement for 75 years. This is why diversity matters. So I am proud to welcome to the stage 4 amazing progressive new members of Congress. Congresswoman Summer Lee, the first Black woman ever elected to the House of Representatives from Pennsylvania, a dedicated activist, lawyer, and advocate for social justice. She has fought tirelessly to lift up movements, working people, and bring real change to her community. Congresswoman Delia Ramirez, the first Latina to represent Illinois in Congress, an accomplished social service director, a community leader, a coalition builder who has dedicated her life and career to fighting for working families. Representative Greg Casar, my amazing successor as the whip of the Progressive Caucus, the proud son of Mexican immigrants who has passed policies to protect families from being separated, raise wages for thousands of workers, and has successfully fought to end civil rights, to expand civil rights protection. And finally, Congressman Maxwell Frost. The first Gen Z member of Congress. Who I often joke with because I think I technically might be old enough to be his mother. Who is a dedicated, strong advocate in ending gun violence, winning Medicare for all, and transforming our racist criminal justice system and ending the climate crisis. You all put your hands together and help me welcome them to the stage.
You're one of my Congress mothers.
Little fist bump, Summer.
So how are y'all doing?
We're good.
Good. So excited.
Welcome to Chicago, the best city in the world.
I don't know about that.
Go bias.
Orlando, Florida, you know.
Well, it's really good to see all of you. I know that we get to see each other, but we don't really get a lot of opportunities to take stock of everything that's taking place and everything that we've been able to accomplish. So I'm really excited to be able to start this conversation by asking about the journey to Congress. So maybe each of you can take a little time to tell us about your campaign origin story. What was the moment where you decided, okay, I'm definitely going to do this, and what got you there? So we'll start with Max.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, Netroots. This is my first Netroots. Excited to be here. To be super quick, it was January 2021. I had some friends that were talking with me about running for office. It was friends that I had been arrested with during the Black Lives Matter uprising. So it really came from a special place. They said, Maxwell, you know, we think you should run for office. I said, hell no. And then I went on with my day and my month. And, but really it was connecting with my biological mother for the first time in my life in mid-2021 and learning about her story, the fact that I had many siblings, and you know, through my life, I've always really latched onto this quote, Cornel West quote, you gotta see the world through the eyes of the most vulnerable. And being on the phone with my biological mother and hearing about her life, I didn't realize it, but I had been fighting for her, right, as an organizer, and I never even knew it. So it was a very spiritual thing for me, and I hung up the phone and said, I guess I'm gonna run for Congress. And that's my campaign origin story.
So I also said hell no. I come from the state legislature. Illinois has become one of the most progressive states, if not the most progressive in my opinion, right? Raising minimum wage, making sure that we're moving on clean energy, codifying Roe v. Wade, expanding healthcare so non-citizens are able to have access to healthcare until we get Medicare for all, and the list goes on. So coming from the state legislature and being asked to run for Congress, I'm like, hell no. But we got to build a coalition and make sure we have a progressive person that comes from our roots, from our community, representing us in Congress. We can't be apologetic about. And so I said no a couple times. And then I also said, where are we going to raise money? We're not taking money from corporate contributions. We're not going to go in the traditional way. How do we build? But I'll say to you, for me, Ilhan, having a community of people, my mother, my husband who's a dreamer, coupled with my colleagues, right? In this movement that we all got elected in the last 5-6 years, they said to me, your name will be on the ballot, but we're all going with you to Congress. This is about what we're building together. And we ran like that. and we won in a 4-way race by 42 points when I wasn't supposed to win.
Ayo.
But that's what power is and the responsibility of delivering now that we're in Congress. Yeah.
Hey, y'all. Buenos dias. How's everybody doing? So I really felt like it was time to run for higher office. I was a city council member. I had been a labor organizer in Austin, Texas. When I was trudging, yeah, what's up, Texas? When I was trudging through the snow in less than 10-degree weather in Texas, which does not happen in Texas, we had our entire power grid go down, hundreds of people die, people with no water and no power, not just for days, but sometimes for weeks. And I was carrying blankets donated by neighbors who didn't have power in their own homes, but had spare blankets, to a gym where we were keeping people alive. And as we were walking through the snow, my staff sent me a note saying that Ted Cruz had just been spotted getting on a plane to go to the beach in Cancun. And somehow even, you can boo louder for Ted Cruz at Netroots. And somehow even worse, our governor was going on Fox News to blame windmills and the Green New Deal for the power grid failure and the climate crisis. And it was at that moment that it was so clear that not only are they unfit to govern, but they're dangerous, and that we have to go over their heads. And that in our recent history, people of conscience and movements have come together to undo what repressive regimes in the South have done by passing the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act and creating Medicaid, and that we're called to a similar moment now to not just pass Medicaid, but pass Medicare for all. To not just take on the environmental crisis, but to take on the climate crisis. To not just pass the Voting Rights Act, but the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, to restore voting rights to every single person, black, white, and brown, incarcerated or not, immigrant or not. And I think that what pushed me to say I could do this is that there was a national movement and local movements that were pushing for all of us, and what brought us all here today.
So what's up, Netroots? Greetings. Hey, y'all. This is not my first Netroots. Shout out to my people, One Hood. Y'all know I saw y'all. Hey. I love my people in the building. These are my origin stories. When we talk about why I'm here, listen, y'all, I'm black. I'm working class woman from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is the most progressive city in the country now. But listen, I ran for office and I found myself in here because when you're black and you're working class and you're a woman and you're poor and you're dealing with all of this and you live in a community with some of the worst air quality in the nation and your neighbor's grandkid has been shot in the back by police officers 3 times, when you deal with that, listen, you know that our task is you either gotta run, you gotta fight like hell, or you lose, right? So we're coming up on times where we need people who have the ability, who are empowered, who have the support structure to be bold, to go into these places and do bold things. And it's not easy, and it wasn't an easy decision. Nobody says yes to this. Nobody's like, you should run for Congress. And everybody immediately says, yes. If you find that person, don't ask them again. No, don't ask them again. Because this is a deep thing, right? Because we're going into deep places. We're going into high places with people in a system that is built to beat us down. And the reason why I knew I can do it is because I happened to have been in the Netroots room the day where my sister Ayanna Presley said that we don't just need people with black and brown skin. We need folks who are going to fight for black and brown people. I've been in rooms with, and I've watched a squad who came before me who looked in the eye of the enemy and they stood tall. Those were the things that empowered me. So even when I was afraid, even when I was like, I don't know if we can do this, even knowing the times that we're in, how important it is, how hard it was gonna be, I said, you know what? If there are people who are with me who can do this, then I know I can be with them. So I ran and I ended up getting across the finish line because I looked at the folks who I was with. And I said, this is a crew that's worth fighting with. And I know it's a crew who we can win with. And it's because of this audience. I'm like, we can win this, so we did it.
So we did it.
So we did it. You all can see why we're like really excited to have these freshmen in Congress. Many of you talked about what made you decide, and I know that from being first is not easy. It's challenging. So I can already imagine how complicated many of your campaigns were. But many of you also alluded to the fact that you had a lot of people, right, backing you and telling you can do this, and you had your own squats to get to Congress. But I want to talk about a little bit on what it felt like to transition from a candidate to now being a member. because we know that there isn't a lot of time to try to figure out what to do and to how to adjust, because the space between winning your election and coming to DC for that orientation, for swearing in, all of that is just a blink of an eye. So what did you find to be the most difficult part of transitioning from a candidate to a congressperson?
Ooh, you're looking at me.
You start.
You know what? Honestly, the first hardest part about transitioning was the fact that my campaign was ugly as hell. And it did something to me. When you get beat up the way that I got beat up, you can't go through that unchanged. And no matter how exciting it is to win, a part of that, you have to carry a part of that sorrow with you, knowing that things won't be the same. And then immediately, I was talking to Alex, and she was like, listen, it's gonna be like Hogwarts, like someone's gonna call you and they're just gonna get whisked away. And I was like, no, really? And you get like a secret message and it's like, be in the Capitol on Tuesday, like next Tuesday. And you gotta get down there and you don't know if you're getting a reimbursement and you gotta quit your jobs and you don't have any paychecks and you have nothing. You start with nothing. People think that government comes prepackaged. Y'all, it does not. When you start as a member of Congress, you don't have a staff, you don't have a website, you don't have a Twitter handle, you don't have a pen, you don't have a printer, you don't have a piece of paper. Literally, you don't have an apartment. You don't know how you're gonna get there. You gotta find out where you're gonna stay. Me and Delia looked at each other 3 days into orientation. We're like, you have somewhere to live? And she was like, no. I was like, oh, we're gonna live together. And then Greg literally gave up the house that we ended up living in because he found something better. So it's like that. So it's like that. You're finding out everything in real time. You're trying to find staff in real time. Who are gonna be your people who are gonna be for you when we go to this place that's not built for us? Everything tells you to get hill-minded people, to get people who know what they're doing. And I'm saying that I came here to do something new. So I had to find people who are willing to do something new with me, and that's not easy.
So the transition wasn't easy, but I do want to talk a little bit about this, that it was better for me this time than it was transitioning into office in 2014 as a council member. And I think it speaks to the progressive movement. I mean, back then, being a Fight for 15 person, telling everybody to organize their workplace, talking about publicly funding abortion travel for young people, that was like it was a lonely thing. And then seeing Ilhan and these other folks that blazed that trail in 2018 made it easier for us. Now we came in with this crew of people. And so coming in 2014, feeling really isolated and alone, I think it's important for us to own that we've really shifted stuff. I mean, a lot is hard, but we should know that we actually can change things. And so now we've got these folks with us in Congress. Like I can listen to records with Maxwell and go out dancing with Delia and lose to Summer in basketball and have a team. And when you start having that team, that brings more and more people through the door, and that's going to change the face of power.
Yep.
And I think it's really important, you were saying, like you're walking into this space. I think for all of us, it was a different experience coming into Congress, but to be able to build this relationship, right? To be intentional on a text thread, on a multiple text threads, right? Checking in, how are you? How are you feeling about this vote? How are you gonna vote? What do you need from me, right? How do we talk through this? I think it's so incredibly important because the moment you're in that space, you are targeted. Your existence, right, is a threat to the status quo that said you should not be there. So I think that's incredibly important. But I'm gonna also tell you, this is the other piece that I think we don't talk enough about, how you select your staff. Because you have to have a team that shares your values, has the same North Star that you do, and that understands that you are part of a movement. That you're not just saying, yes, I'm gonna co-sponsor that here, or I'm gonna move this way, or I'm gonna be the comfortable Democrat. I sit as the vice-ranking member in Homeland Security, having to look at Marjorie Taylor Greene call my family aliens, illegals, and an infestation every committee hearing, right? So how do you have a team that not only is preparing you for committees, but is also cheerleading you, walking with you, pushing you to stay grounded to who you are, because that place wasn't designed to have working class people there. And I think the other part for me that I had to really understand is, while it wasn't designed for us, it really wasn't, we belong there. And I think that's really important. I'll close in saying this. Oftentimes we are told that being working class is actually a liability. Oftentimes we are told being working class, you're not going to be able to move with power, fit in these places. We are a contribution and an asset to US Congress because we have the ability to relate to more than 90% of this country, unlike the rich billionaires that bought their seats to get there. So yes, we belong, and yes, we need more of us.
You know, for me, to what Delia was saying, when we got that message that was like, be on the Capitol on Tuesday, or Sunday.
Yeah, Sunday. Yeah.
When we were there for a week, it was just a whirlwind, right? Like for all of us, we had just won our elections. We come in, we're learning all this, we're meeting all these people, and I remember coming home that like Saturday, walking in my living room and literally saying, I kind of forgot what my living room looked like. I mean, I was, and I remember standing there and I was like, this is how people lose themselves. I like finally really understood it, being kind of on the other side, and I was like, never again, right? Like, I'm not perfect. I have to set up systems of accountability with the people in my community to make sure that this never happens again, even that inkling of that feeling. And that was really important to me. And so working with my staff, and we're still figuring out, we don't have it perfect. How do we, have this concept of co-governance and what that really means, that the decisions we make are always rooted in the community that I'm representing. And that's really important to me. And I learned that first week on how important that was. But having folks like this on, like, be my family in Congress is why I'm able to do it at all, to be honest. And there's people, Greg was just talking about this, there are folks who came before us who made it possible. Because this is really hard, but it's not impossible because of the people who came before us. And I think about, as a young person, I think about someone like Alexandria or Ilhan who came in and literally went through hell, right, as a freshman. I think about the fact that I'm in the Congressional Black Caucus and the Hispanic Caucus. All I had to do was sign up for both of them. There are people who came before me who went through hell to do that, to be recognized as Afro-Latino. And so I'm also recognizing the fact—
Still are not recognized.
And still not fully recognized. And I'm just realizing the fact that so many people went through those trials and tribulations before me that made it possible, and I'm so grateful and so honored to be a part of that tradition.
We're zooming through, Ilhan. We're zooming through.
I was having like just flashbacks to all the horrors as you all were describing this. But you're right, it does make a difference when you have a community, and there is a really close relationships that people develop with their classmates. Because it is a unique experience, right? Because it's about the time and the moment that you get elected and what's going on. It's about, what is also happening on the Hill as you're coming in. And I think oftentimes people don't, there are like everyday people who get elected to Congress. I remember there was a member from Iowa, talking about just the resources, whether you get reimbursed and these kind of things. And this member she's no longer there, but I remember vividly having a conversation with her on how she didn't have enough money to eat. And just the challenges of what it means to have run against all the odds, to now come in and to be reminded that everybody else feels comfortable because this was all built for them and it is not for you, and you're gonna continue to be in this struggle. And so how do you create a community around you to get you through that struggle? And one of the biggest struggles that we had is that we walked into a shutdown. So talking about not having a computer, not having telephones, like there was no government. To be able to do that for us. It wasn't even like, can you prepare fast enough to get these things going? We historically were in the longest shutdown in the history of the United States when we got sworn in. But you also came into another kind of history when you got sworn in. You got sworn in within a session that was without rules, without a speaker.
At 2 a.m.?
And differently than us, you walked into a minority. I always say, I served in the minority when I was in the Minnesota House. I'm now serving in the minority after serving in the majority. There's nothing more painful, y'all, than being a minority in government. And so can you talk a little bit, and you know, whoever wants to take this, and how you have been able to navigate the minority, and how are you finding forums for your ideas and the policies that you want to push?
I can take this one. I mean, look, we all looked at committees, right? And we wanted to get into what they call the A committees. I wanted to get into financial services because I want to work on housing, right? I think we all, we were like judiciary, right? There are all these committees that folks wanted to get into, and then you had to remind yourself, you're a freshman in the minority, so there's even less seats in those committees, and the Republicans took seats in areas where they should have been getting more members, not less. So I had to select, with a very limited option of which committees, and I serve now in veteran affairs. And people are like, what's a progressive doing serving in veteran affairs? And it's interesting, right? Because if you come from organizing, you always know how to, okay, we're in this space, where is the power, what is our commitment, what are we trying to move? I have an opportunity there to work on veteran housing. I have an opportunity there to work on abortion care for veterans. I just introduced a bill that came out of subcommittee, that will restore benefits for veterans who've been defrauded by for-profit schools. Now, I'm in Homeland Security, I can't do any of that, but in this committee, right? So it's like, I think one of those things is like, how can you, even in the minority, find places where you can deliver in some way for your community? Because what our community isn't going to have is this excuse here, I'm in the minority, I can't do anything for you. That's BS, right?
Yeah, so. Exactly. Like the worst thing is people saying, well, in the minority, your job is to wait to be in the majority. No. That's the worst. And then people saying your job is to win the majority, I think is the bare minimum, winning elections. Mm-hmm. But that's the bare minimum. It's actually this huge opportunity for us to actually build an agenda, build a caucus, and build the kind of power in the community so that we have an actual pro-working families majority that will wield its power on behalf of folks. That's the point. And so right now, I think we have to be organizing and supporting people in every district. If we have movement organizations functional across the country, if we have a strong progressive caucus that's willing to whip and willing to push, if we push on the president, then the idea might be that we can actually win a majority that will change the rules so that we stop having essentially psychopaths able to set the rules and do something good for folks, have people believe in democracy and build that kind of virtuous cycle. Yeah. So right now is the organizing time.
I would say too, there's like a blessing hidden in the curse of being in the minority. And I think the blessing is, it's testing my creativity, right? It really is. And it's given me an opportunity to take a step back and feel and say how can I do this better? And I ran on this. I come from a state that's run by a fucking fascist. And when yes, boo. And when
we can boo more for Ron DeSantis.
We can boo higher for Ron DeSantis. Boo! And it's not just him. There's an apparatus, right? But either way, when people were telling me, oh, we got to wait for the majority, which there are some members that even told me that, and then I come home and I see, books being banned, trans people getting erased, just everything going on, I was like, I can't wait around. You can't do it. So it flexes your creativity. And for instance, we hosted an ad hoc hearing, which is you just get a room and then you make it a hearing, and we did it on Florida and what's going on in Florida, and it gave a lot of people hope and gave us the opportunity to highlight what was going on. On the campaign side, I'm very passionate about year-round organizing, and that we always have to be knocking doors, making phone calls with our movements, with our unions, etc. And building that trust with the community. And so we're doing that now. We have 10 paid organizing fellows that are super young that we're training, and we're gonna do it forever. That is my commitment. And so I think being in the minority has given me the opportunity and given my team the opportunity to kind of take a step back and say, how can we do this better, especially in this moment, and especially in our state that I know and that I love and that I was born in. How can we do better for them? And so I really refuse this whole thing where it's we have to wait for the majority. I didn't run to wait. I did not run to wait. And so I think that's the blessing and the curse there.
Ellen, do you have a banger, or you want me to answer that one?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. I was in a minority for 4 years in the PA House. On the day that I got elected to Congress, I came into the minority in Congress and the state house won a majority. So I've been doing this forever. And I think that, I personally think that minorities are times where you expand the realm of what is possible. People ask me all the time, they were like, what was your legacy, or what is the thing that you're most proud about at the state level? And they always want you to say a bill. They always want you to talk about your tenure in office as if the only thing that you can do is to get a bill across, the finish line. And yes, that is one marker of success. That's one metric, but it is not the only one. And when we're progressives, we recognize that the bill to get Medicare for all over the finish line isn't gonna happen on just one day, and it ain't gonna just be one of us. You know what? When you are progressives, we're expanding the realm of what's possible. We are making Democrats and independents and anybody else understand that we actually can push for more. And as we're doing that, we're building bigger majorities. As we're doing that, we're making a space that is more safe, that is more welcoming for the next crop of people to come in. We're making sure that we're building armies of folks to push our bigger agendas. Because yes, we can all get a name. We can all name a bridge. We can all name a post office. We can all do some sorts of bills. But the reality is that for us, we actually need the bigger thing, which means that we need to do more lifting and we need to get more people. So I believe in an opt-in, not an opt-out, right? I want more progressives. I don't want fewer progressives. I don't need to give everybody a litmus test. I want to get you to where I need you to be so that we can get liberation for my people, right? And I'm willing to go and do that. So that's what we do in minorities. And I'm way too used to doing it. I would like to do it in the majority.
Summer, you made me think about something, and I want you to expand, and maybe I'll throw it back to Max as well. Most of us are younger than the average member of Congress. Most of us are people of color. All of us are people of color. And there's something about your story that you began with earlier that deeply resonates with me, because I have not had a non-brutalizing campaign. Every single campaign I've run has stripped so much of me and my family and my community. And I've always worried if that could be an obstacle for other people saying, I'm gonna do this, when they see how much we've been beaten up, right? I've been proud to see so many, Minnesota now has a trifecta, everything is going really great, shout out to Minnesota. There are more people of color than when I was there, so things are going well. Can you say a little bit about where do you think our movement is going, what it needs, and how do we sustain ourselves and continue to stand up to the establishment?
Yeah, I can, y'all, because honestly, while we're all here gathered at Netroots, I need y'all to know that we have a big threat, to our movement. We have had cycle after cycle where, defying the odds, we have been able to do incredible things, right? The fact that we have Ilhan and that we have Rashida, who came in as our first Muslim women, the fact that we now have a new cycle. Every cycle we have added to our numbers, and every cycle we are emboldening in our movement. But the opposition is also getting savvier, and they're richer, and they are more bold to do anything that they can. The ends justify the means with them. When I think about it, how my district was basically just bombarded by ads, by money, by people who can say whatever they want to get whatever they need, those folks are not gonna stop. I'm the only person who was able to fight back against AIPAC's fight, right? I'm gonna just say it. I'm the only person from my cycle who made it. And when they came into the district, they didn't come into the district actually listening, actually wanting to know, what do our communities want? What does our Jewish community want? What does our black community need? Those weren't folks who cared about that. They came in with a conservative agenda. They are conservative people who want a conservative U.S. Congress. And it's okay to say that. But the reality is that they're going to come up against us, and they're going to come up against progressive, especially people of color who want to run. When they put ads into my district, they said I wasn't a Democrat. They were dog whistles and all these things. And I thought about little black girls who watched those ads. And I can't tell you how many of them came up to me and they were crying because they had seen something in me and our movement, and that made them shrink a little bit. We want to do things, and as a movement, we have to do things that only make us grow. We don't want to do things as disenfranchised, so we can't use the same tactics as them. Even when we're coming up against money, that means that we have to come with love. We have to come with coalition building. That means that we have to come stronger, building out. We can't use their tactics because their tactics keep people home. So know that the threat is coming, but that means that we need to be organized in every district. When you leave up out of here, you need to go back to your home and we need to start organizing. We need to start finding candidates who are reflective of our ideals and our values, and we need to love them and we need to support them. Yes, accountability, but also we all are collectively accountable in a co-governing model. We need to make sure that we are getting them the money they need. We're making sure that we're getting them the exposure that they need, and we are making sure that we are fighting back and telling the truth where there are lies in the air. So that's going to be our task, and I hope that we are all up for it because it's about to get ugly.
So I want to end. I want to end with Max because, you know, I've been in Congress for a bit. All my children have grown up to know that everything is possible, right? They've seen me, they've seen people breaking barriers. But they've never really written a letter to a member of Congress. But they wrote it to Max. My little one saw Max and she was like, how old is he? And I was like, not that old. And she was like, can I write him a letter to tell him thank you? And so I want to end it with you because there was something hopeful in that. And that was also, I think, part of the message that she's been hearing, of that young people stepping up and leading and seeing her older sisters do that and now seeing you do that. What are you most hopeful about for your generation? And where do you think that movement is going to head to? We got like 45 seconds, so. But leave us with
real
some
quickly,
hope.
Yeah. When I was a national organizing director at March for Our Lives, I remember there was a call that just really put this in perspective for me. It was like all of our organizers across the country, I think I was talking about some event, and then I was like, does anyone have any questions? And there was someone who was like 12 or 13 years old that unmuted and asked a series of questions about how folks with a specific disability would access this, how people who didn't have access to internet would access this. And just hearing that, seeing the world through the eyes of the most vulnerable, from someone who's part of my generation, but when I was that age, I wasn't thinking that way. That gave me hope. And you know, as I've been able to meet with so many more young people across the country, I feel like that is a defining factor of not just Gen Z, but young people in general. They're looking at the world and going like, this is messed up, right? And I want more for my neighbor. And we're rejecting this politics of scarcity that past generations have put us in. That if I'm getting something, that means you must be losing something, right? No, not in this country. We accept the politics of abundance where we can all eat, we all have housing, we all live in a clean environment, we all have the resources that we need. And that's what gives me hope. And the resiliency is difficult, especially being in my state, because when I decided to run, so many people told me a progressive can't win in Florida, in this district, et cetera. And I sat down and I said, what does it look like to be progressive from the South? You know, like what does that look like? Especially when we have this threat of fascism around. And it was young people time and time again, whether it was the Dream Defenders, which I know some of them are here, Squad! March for Our Lives, young immigrant farm workers in Apopka, right? Like all across my state, that's what's giving me hope. Yeah, Apopka, yeah. That's what gives me hope, are the movements of young people rising up that I think have really changed the way this country thinks about issues and thinks about each other. And like Summer said, we gotta lead with love. We gotta love each other. Love is not a passive thing. Sometimes love is aggressive, and that's an okay thing, but that's what gives me hope.
Look at, they're gonna flash.
I know,
yeah,
it's flashing.
It's like saying wrap up, it's giving me a strobe light.
I think you all can listen to them. I can continue to talk to them for hours, but we're out of time. It is a perfect way to end, knowing that we are up against massive amounts of challenge. We are still hopeful because we know together we are going to win.